What's up, everybody? Rob Ferretti here with some Koenigsegg news and some other hypercar news, because hypercar news never really comes in ones, it comes in twos or threes. So like when some manufacturer does something, I'm pretty sure the other manufacturers know about it and they get right on their heel to either ride off of that success or try to beat and squash that success. So somebody does 270 miles an hour, the next guy's out there 4 days later does 275 miles an hour. Well, we have something that may be a coincidence or may not be a coincidence here to talk about today, which is the Koenigsegg breaking their own speed record, followed by the Hennessey F5, which has set a recent speed record at COTA, but has just crashed at a significant speed, which is 250 miles an hour. And this was done on a closed course at Kennedy Space Center on the runway, so they got a giant runway to work with, but we'll get to that in a second. First off, you know I love Koenigsegg. They make probably the most well-engineered, ultra-performance cars in the world. I was lucky enough to go to the factory and be able to drive one and even witness this.
As long as you lift off the front.
No, you can do it with the front pump as well. So you can do it in four.
You're like, I can't do it.
You can have four front pumps. That's fast because you might do something cool.
I can tell anybody.
Wow. That's absurd.
That was actually really cool.
Now, fast forward, that was almost 10 years ago. They have gone even further. They had set the 0 to 250 to 0 record with their Koenigsegg Rug-Era. Now they have broken their own record by going even faster with their Jesko Absolute. They just set a 0 to 250 to 0 record of 27 seconds, whatever it was. It beat their own record by like a second and a half. That's nuts and just accelerating. Like, look, everybody could be like, oh, I got a twin turbo Lambo, it can outpace this. We are talking production cars. We are not talking we brought it somewhere on a trailer. We are talking about vehicles that are sold to a guy with enough money to buy it, who can theoretically drive it across the country. They can drive it on a rally. They can do what they want with it. You can't do that with your 2 miles per gallon, need race fuel, need a bag of ice on my cooling system to like. That is what you get with these cars that go faster than this. These are cars that are now built with a warranty. And Hennessey has also stepped into that ring, right? So if I'm thinking of hypercars, I'm thinking of probably the Rimac, which is electric. I'm thinking of Bugatti, I'm thinking of Koenigsegg, Pagani to a lesser extent, because I think Pagani is a hypercar, but it is a hypercar in class, but not necessarily performance. I don't think Pagani is ever setting any records. They're just making gorgeous pieces of automotive art, which also do very well, and they perform very well, but they don't perform, they're not on that cutting edge. And fast forward, you're introducing now the Hennessey, the F5. Now the F5 is a much smaller manufacturer, which is Hennessey Performance Engineering out of Sealy, Texas. And I was lucky enough, I went down there. I've been doing this for a long time. I got to do a bunch of cool stuff. John even blew up my Camaro. That was fun, right? But since then, he has produced what is called the Venom GT, which was their first step into the hypercar market. And from there, he went on to make the F5. Now, the F5 just set the lap record at COTA for a production car. And COTA is Circuit of the Americas. It's a Formula One track. Very quick. I've driven a Formula One car around COTA, and it's that back straight's pretty long. I'm pretty sure the F5 hit 193 miles an hour on that back straight, which is nuts. I did 186 in the Formula One car because it was geared to 300 kilometers an hour in the pouring rain. It was again, let's just say it was nuts. But you don't realize what it's like to set a lap record at a track like that. And they beat the McLaren P1. Yes, it's probably like 10 years old now, but by all measures of performance, it's a hybrid car with terrific performance. And they beat him by 7 seconds. So that's a lot. That's like a big, that 7 seconds is Like, he's not even coming on to the front straight while the other car is crossing the line. So think about that. So that's an impressive feat. Has anyone else tried to match that? Is COTA really the benchmark? No, a lot of cars go to Nürburgring, but COTA is probably one of the fastest tracks we have in the country. I would say COTA or maybe Road America up in Wisconsin. Probably the two fastest tracks that we have. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Hennessey bringing his F5 for a speed run, and the details are never really going to be known, right? Like, they may have known that Koenigsegg just did the 0 to 250 to 0, so they were going to go out and try to beat it and be like, haha, we beat your 0 to 250 to 0 3 days later. Nice record. We're going to take it from here. And that's not going to send Koenigsegg out again to like redesign their car. That would give then Hennessey the flag to wave for 6 months. They'd be able to carry all of that initial buzz of people saying how great it was, and then them stepping in and saying, haha, we beat that. That's my assumption, but that's a big assumption. The car that crashed at Kennedy Space Center crashed at 250 miles an hour, which is a convenient number because 250 miles an hour would be the speed at which you were transitioning, which is probably going to be the most dangerous part of the speed run. Isn't the accelerating, isn't when you're settled into your braking, but it's going from full acceleration to full brake, because that's going to unsettle the car the most. And 250 miles an hour, have you ever stepped on the brakes hard at 150 or 170 miles an hour? If you have done like threshold braking at 160 miles an hour, you would understand the car tends to get upset. Now, fast forward 100 miles an hour faster than that, and you can imagine you're going to need a lot more downforce. You're going to need a lot more stuff going on. And even if you think about when you're designing something, and all these cars are designed from scratch, you're hitting the wind tunnel, and you're hitting the wind tunnel from the front. You're not being like, all right, now let's lift the chassis a little bit as if we're going to start braking and see if we can shoot some air under the side of it. Who knows? Nobody really does testing like that, because how often are you going to need to do full braking from 250 miles an hour? Even if you do a top speed run, you're going to start slowing down gradually. You're just going to like ease off the throttle or decelerate with the air, because obviously you're using a lot of horsepower to push through the air, but the wind resistance at that speed is going to slow you down significantly. If you're doing something on like a salt flat, you're going to pop a parachute. But if you're just relying on the brakes of that car, whole different story. Now, especially if you're going to try to set a record, that is when you're going to come. And now, let me get a car. Do we have a car, John? Here's the car. It's the Hulkman. So when you're accelerating, I mean, you think of it as a drag strip, right? You step on the gas, front end lifts. But eventually, you're not lifting the front end down the whole drag strip. The wind resistance is going to start pushing you down. Then the aerodynamics are coming into play. So when you're doing 250 miles an hour, the car is not like this. The car is like this. Then when you let off the gas, if you let off the gas abruptly enough, it's possible it'll lift a little bit, but it's still probably pushing down. For the record, I'm not an engineer. I'm a YouTuber, which means I can make up whatever I want and sound confident, and somebody in the comments will correct me. So we're going to do that. So I'm thinking that the car is coming like this, and it's pushed down a little bit in the front because you get all this wind resistance. Then when he goes to switch over to the brakes, and now what you would think, if it's going this way, it's like this. When you hit the brakes, most of the brake bias is in the front, right? That's generally how cars are set up. Most of the braking is done in the front. And if anything, it sort of lifts the back end because you're now going hard on the brakes and lifting the back end up a little bit. That's where I could see a loss of control, because now all that contact patch that you have in the rear, especially without a large rear wing or something to create that additional downforce, the back end gets light and you go like this. And you've seen cars do that, these big turbo cars like the Lambos with big turbos on them at these mile events, especially when they lose control. They generally lose control when they're going really fast, when they let off the gas in the end, and then they go sailing and flipping from there. The way this played out was an anonymous report said that was at the scene. I was contacted by a source who told me that on July 1st, 2024, The Hennessey Venom F5 was being driven by David Donahue and was traveling around 240 miles an hour when the car lifted off the ground, went up in the air approximately 50 feet and flipped at least 2 times in the air before landing on its roof and sliding over 100 yards to a stop. That is a quote. Now, just for context, the ceiling here is 20 feet. So you're saying that this car, in whatever form, you could be thinking of like the Nürburgring crash, right? When the car went sailing up in the air and went over the fence. That's what I'm envisioning. For a car to go 50 feet up in the air, which is more than double the height of this warehouse, and flip over twice in the air and then land on its roof, I can't imagine, the roof has no braking, I can't imagine the roof only sliding from 250 or 240 miles an hour, only sliding 100 yards. So like these numbers may be a little bit off, but 50 feet seems too high. And then I'd say 100 yards at 250 miles an hour, it's 300 feet. You can't even stop from 300 feet using the brakes and a parachute. I can't imagine you're going to do it on the roof of your car. Unless a lot of the speed was scrubbed by flying in the air, who knows? That's to be seen. Now, I can guarantee you this. I can guarantee you, and let's just get that out there, the driver was reportedly not hurt. Now, this was reported that it was done, and everyone will be quick to say, well, Hennessey's covering it up. They're not going to release. I guarantee you there is video footage of this. Anytime a hypercar moves, somebody's recording it. And if you're doing something for speed testing, data logging, anything like that, there's a video. Now, you could say they're going to try to hide something and not release the video, but understand that's just not what people do, right? Like it doesn't help. There's no benefit for anyone, especially Hennessey, to release a video of the car crashing. Now, other cars have crashed before too, right? Like Koenigsegg, their Koenigsegg crashed at the Nürburgring with their test driver in the car. Whether they were setting a lap record, whatever it is, they always have to do some sort of narrative where they didn't, something failed or somebody misjudged something, if something happened. They weren't trying to set a record. They weren't trying to do this. They weren't trying to do that. The amazing thing about this crash is if it was just high speed testing and they were testing the aerodynamics, which is what was said in the official statement, they weren't trying to do 0 to 250 to 0. That means it was just driving along and all of a sudden went sailing off into the sky. That would be significantly worse for a company, I think. If they lost control under a transition and then air got under the car and it went sailing off like a kite, you can't do anything at that point in time. It happens to everybody. Don't expect the video to be out there. There's no benefit for them because all you're going to do is get a bunch of guys like me and a bunch of people on the internet. See, I told you it needs 1.3 degrees more in downforce on the way. Like, we don't know what we're talking about. We're not there. We're not designing cars. You want to design a car and show everybody? Go design your own car. But until then, this is a dangerous game. Anything over 200, 250 miles an hour, it gets very dangerous. It gets very hairy, which is why not a lot of companies attempt it. And it's really not a space that a lot of people venture into because even the people that buy these cars, they're buying it because it can go 270 miles an hour, but nobody's ever doing that. There's nowhere to ever drive it. Even on the Autobahn, you'll see a video of a guy in a Bugatti doing like 250 miles an hour, and everyone's like, oh my God, that's nuts. And it is pretty nuts. Like if you've ever driven at speeds like that, that's going very, very fast, and the risk reward there isn't so great. So there you have it. We have a lot of non-information. Don't expect any more information. Don't think it's anything unusual that Hennessey's not going to release the video or any additional information beyond what the official narrative is because they're still in business. They're still going to keep testing. I'd be very nervous. I'm hoping, and this is my assumption, that it was transitioning from acceleration to braking, and that's what made the car light. And even if it made it light and the air got under the back and it lifted, it may have sailed around and flipped over. I don't know what happens once the air takes over, but hopefully it wasn't just straight acceleration because that sort of stuff you can sort of predict in a wind tunnel and wouldn't be something that you generally experience in the car, which I'm pretty sure has gone faster than 250 miles an hour before. And the runway at Kennedy Space Center is as perfect as a surface can get. Luckily, they did it in the right place. There's nowhere to really hit anything. You got a super wide runway, super flat, super perfect pavement, and I'm glad everyone's okay, and we will continue with the pursuit of speed and ultra high speed superiority. I don't know what we're going to call this, ultra ground speed. It's a world that I'm never really going to dabble in, but it's cool to watch. Rob Ferretti, thank you for watching. See you next time.